Police arrest 2 in connection with a fatal kidnapping case. The city's daily COVID tally rebounds to over 8,000. And in Uzbekistan, President Xi Jinping is expected to meet with Vladimir Putin later today. Good evening and welcome. Sources say police have discovered a body of a man on a hillside in Takuling in the northern New Territories. The body is believed to belong to a 51-year-old man who was kidnapped about 10 days ago. So far, police have arrested 2 people in connection with the case.
Police officers searched for evidence on a hillside at Pingyang village in Takuling this morning. In the afternoon, a human body was found. A group of officers in full protective gear carried out investigations in the area. Forensic experts also arrived on the scene to help determine the victim's identity and the cause and time of death. Sources say the family of the victim received a call 10 days ago saying the 51-year-old unemployed man was kidnapped because he was in debt by $3.6 million. The family was asked to repay the debt in exchange for his release. But they did not do so since they could not confirm whether or not the hostage was still alive, and they called the police. During their investigation, police found the hostage's car was spotted in Fanling. Officers arrested 2 kidnappers at a restaurant in Fanling on Wednesday afternoon. One of them admitted to killing the hostage by mistake on the same day when the man's family received the phone call, and he buried the body on the hillside near Pingyang village. Initial investigations show the kidnappers imprisoned the man at Taiwan Temple in the area. Police also believe the hostage was beaten up as there were blood stains in the temple. One kidnapper was also taken to the temple to help the police with the crime reconstruction. Last night, police officers seized evidence from a housing estate in Takuling near where the dead body was found. There have been other kidnapping cases in recent years. In December 2021, a foreign domestic helper and a 19-month-old toddler were kidnapped and locked up inside a shipping container in Yunlong. They successfully escaped with the help of nearby residents. Just a month before that, a 39-year-old Bitcoin investor was abducted and locked up in Nam Hang Chun. He managed to escape, having suffered broken bones. By law, anyone involved in kidnapping is liable to a maximum penalty of life imprisonment.
The city's daily COVID infections have rebounded to above 8,000 cases. The Center for Health Protection says infection numbers in the next few days will reflect transmissions over the course of the Mid-Autumn Festival holiday. Timothy Lee has more.
After days of more than 10,000 daily COVID cases in early September, infections dropped to below 8,000 cases in the past 3 days. To some, the pandemic seemed to have eased. But hopes for an uninterrupted decline in coronavirus cases were dashed, as daily infection numbers rebounded to 8,187 today. That's around 600 more than yesterday's tally.
The previous drop could be due to fewer people going for testing during the Mid-Autumn Festival, and there is a slight increase in recent days, and we need more observation. And we believe that more cases may emerge as more people become infected during the holidays.
Among the new infections, the BA.4 and BA.5 mutant strains accounted for nearly 80% of all cases. According to the World Health Organization, more than 90% of current global coronavirus cases carry the BA.5 mutant strain. The Center for Health Protection noted that while COVID patients continue to increase in numbers, there is a gradual slowdown in that growth. In early August, the increase in infections over a period of 2 weeks was 240%, while that percentage dropped to just 32% in the past 2 weeks. The CHP said it will need to further observe Hong Kong's pandemic situation to determine whether the growth rate has plateaued. Meanwhile, after an 86-year-old male patient from Pok Oi Hospital's Medical and Geriatrics Clinic tested positive on Wednesday, 3 other male patients sharing his ward were infected. 16 residents and 1 staff member were infected from 11 care homes across the city. 664 schools reported a total of 1,064 cases. 12 schools had to suspend face-to-face classes. 6 COVID patients, 2 men and 4 women aged between 73 and 95, became the pandemic's latest fatalities. They all suffered from chronic illness, including 5 individuals who were not triple jabbed. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The world has never been in a better position to end the COVID-19 pandemic. The remark was made by the head of the World Health Organization, marking his most optimistic outlook yet on the crisis, which has killed over 6 million people.
Last week, the number of weekly reported deaths from COVID-19 was the lowest since March 2020. We have never been in a better position to end the pandemic. We're not there yet, but the end is in sight.
The past week saw over 11,000 deaths globally caused by the coronavirus, down 22% from a week ago. At the same period, 3.1 million people were COVID-19 positive, a fall of 28%. But the WHO head urged nations to take a hard look at their policies and strengthen them for COVID-19 and future viruses. The WHO's next meeting is due in October, in which experts will decide whether the pandemic still represents a public health emergency of international concern. President Xi Jinping has arrived in Uzbekistan to attend the upcoming Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. He is expected to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin later today. Christy Khan reports.
President Xi Jinping arrived in Uzbekistan last night after his visit to Kazakhstan. Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev and other officials welcomed his arrival at the airport. This was Xi's first trip aboard since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Xi is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. This will be the first in-person meeting between the two leaders after Russia invaded Ukraine. CCTV reported that Xi has received the Order of Friendship awarded by Uzbek presidents in Samarkand earlier today. The order highlights the highest state order of friendship between China and Uzbekistan. Additionally, sources said two countries had signed a $15 billion investment agreement. Meanwhile, President Xi is also expected to meet other leaders in the summit, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Another highlight of this year's summit will be the welcoming of new member, Iran. This is only the second time that the organization has recruited new members since India and Pakistan in 2017. According to Russian media, some 10 countries, such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Syria, have also shown interest in joining the SCO. And Belarus had already applied to join the organization. Christy Khan, TVB News.
Beijing has lodged solemn representations with the United States after a U.S. Senate panel advanced legislation that would enhance U.S. military support for Taiwan. If the bill continues to go forward, it would affect U.S.-China relations. That's according to Mourning, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson. She says China will take all necessary measures to resolutely defend its national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Mao also described the new U.S. legislation as sending a serious false signal to the separatist forces of Taiwan independence. Yesterday, the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee voted 17-5 to back the Taiwan Policy Act of 2022. That came despite concerns about the bill in U.S. President Joe Biden's administration and anger about the measure from Beijing. The Russian and Chinese navies are holding joint patrols in the Pacific Ocean. The Russian Defense Ministry said today that crews from both sides were conducting joint tactical maneuvers and carrying out exercises involving artillery and helicopters. The move is expected to deepen military and diplomatic ties between Beijing and Moscow when their relations with the West have soured. Russia and China warships conducted their first joint patrols of the Western Pacific Ocean in October last year. That exercise was closely monitored by Japan, which called the joint maneuvers unusual. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited one of the cities liberated by his armed forces during their counteroffensive in the northeast Kharkiv region. Officials say the settlements have been left devastated by 6 months of Russian occupation with evidence of atrocities. Meanwhile, Zelensky's car was involved in an accident in the capital, Kiev, but the president is safe. Nazvi Karim reports.
Just days ago, Izium was under Russian control. On Wednesday, it was deemed safe enough for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to visit after his forces recaptured the city in their counter-offensive sweep of the northeast region of Kharkiv. Zelensky's pride at watching his country's flag being hoisted was likely dimmed somewhat by what was left behind after 6 months of Russian occupation. It is a shell of a city. Government facilities were burnt out, apartment buildings charred, and evidence of artillery strikes wherever he looked, stirring up memories of the town of Bucha on the outskirts of the capital Kiev, from where Russian troops were driven out months ago.
I know this region very well. There are no surprises. It's, you know, that's not shock for me. The view is very shocking, but it's not shock for me because we began to see the same pictures from Bucha, from the first deoccupied territories. So the same, destroyed buildings, killed people, and so what can I say?
On his return to Kyiv, it was reported that Zelensky's car was involved in a collision with the private car, but the president did not suffer any serious injuries. Ukrainian prosecutors are now looking for evidence of Russian atrocities on civilians. They say they have found 6 bodies with traces of torture in villages recently retaken from Russian control, including Balaklia and Izium. Russian forces, meanwhile, continue to attack Ukrainian troops on the southern front of Nikolaev. Officials also said 8 cruise missiles destroyed a water pumping station and caused a major river to burst through a dam close to the central city of Kryvyi Rih, Zelensky's birthplace. Thousands of people were without water, but authorities say repairs are underway. Moscow denies targeting civilian infrastructure. On the diplomatic front, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, addressing the media during a visit to Berlin by the Georgian Prime Minister, said he recently spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin on the phone and did not hold out much hope for a quick end to the war. Scholz said Putin was defiant and does not think he made a mistake when he sent Russian troops to Ukraine in February, adding that Germany would continue to keep communication lines with the Kremlin open. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Still ahead on tonight's news. Thousands filed past Queen Elizabeth's coffin as she lies in state in London. Sweden's first woman prime minister steps down after losing an election. And a Consumer Council study finds cancer-causing substances in many margarine and sandwich spread samples. Welcome back to TVB News. In Britain today, Queen Elizabeth's coffin is lying in state at the 900-year-old Westminster Hall until her funeral on Monday. Meanwhile, crowds of people lined up overnight to be some of the first to pay their respects to Britain's longest-serving monarch. As Tracy Furness reports, queues stretch for a few miles and are likely to get longer over the weekend.
Queen Elizabeth II left Buckingham Palace for the last time Wednesday. Her coffin, placed on a horse-drawn gun carriage, was draped in the royal standard and topped with the imperial state crown and a wreath of flowers from her Balmoral estate. King Charles III and the Queen's other children, as well as Prince William and Harry, followed on foot behind the coffin as a sombre procession slowly moved down the Mall into Horse Guards Parade before entering Whitehall and finally to its destination at Westminster Hall. Onlookers were clearly moved as the Queen's coffin went by.
I think it's just the realisation that, you know, we have lost our Queen, and just seeing the coffin pass, it was just special, and it meant a lot to me.
It was a special moment, and I'm truly humbled, and it's a historic day. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I love the Queen, I love the royal family, and I had to be here.
A short service followed at Westminster Hall with other members of the royal family, including Camilla, the Queen Consort, and the Princess of Wales. The coffin will lie in state until the Queen's funeral on Monday. Meanwhile, thousands of mourners lined the South Bank on the River Thames Wednesday to be among the first to pay their respects to the monarch. The line extended about 3 miles. After days of scheduled events since the Queen's death last week, King Charles returned to his home, Highgrove in Gloucestershire, today, while Prince William and Kate will travel to Sandringham to view the floral tributes there. Monday's funeral rehearsals were underway today under cover of darkness. Royalty, presidents and other world leaders are expected to attend, including US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
In Sweden, a closely fought election has seen the Prime Minister step down in favour of the opposition right-wing bloc. With almost all the votes counted, the leader of the Swedish moderate party, Ulf Kristersson, says his will be the next Prime Minister. He is ready to form a new government. Earlier in the evening, Sweden's Social Democrat Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson accepted defeat, handing victory to the four-party right-wing opposition bloc. The opposition alliance looks set to get 176 seats in the 349-seat parliament. With a handful of votes yet to be counted, Andersson, who became Sweden's first woman prime minister last year, said the results showed the right bloc had won. Local cake shop chain Crostini says it's unable to pay its overdue rent a day after it announced the closure of all its stores around town. The Eating Establishment Employees General Union says Crostini employees are owed up to $5 million in wage arrears and severance payments. The Mandatory Provident Fund Scheme Authority says the chain failed to make mandatory contributions for 120 employees in August, totaling $120,000. Earlier this year, the government banned landlords from terminating the tenancy of tenants who failed to pay rents between January and July. Crostini said when the protection period expired, landlords demanded the payment of the deferred rent and it was unable to come up with the money. Food and beverage sector lawmaker Tommy Chung said companies should manage their operations better and not rely on the rental enforcement moratorium. The Consumer Council found more than 90% of the margarine and spreads it had tested contained cancer-causing substances. Among the 16 samples tested, genotoxic carcinogen glycidol were found in 15 products. One of them also exceeded the level allowed by European Union standards. Furthermore, 13 samples were also found to contain 3-MCPD, an excess of which harms kidney functions and the central nervous system. Separately, the watchdog also found a year-on-year increase in average expenditure on test books. The rise was higher than the 1.7% inflation rate during the same period, with an increase of 5.7% for primary school textbooks and 2.9% for secondary textbooks. The council suggested that schools offer free self-developed teaching materials or subsidize the printing cost to alleviate students' financial burden.
Affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, online learning has become the new normal for schools. Most schools have opted for textbook sets which include both e-textbook and physical textbook, instead of fully switching to e-textbook, which in turn increases the textbook expenditure substantially.
After 1 year of free entry starting on the 12th of November, visitors to the M+ Museum must pay to enter. Standard adult tickets will be priced at $120, while $60 will be charged for children aged between 7 and 11. Full-time students, those aged 60 or above, disabled individuals and those receiving welfare. Adult tickets for the museum's special exhibitions will cost $240, with discount tickets costing $150. The special exhibition tickets include the cost for the standard entrance fee. Visitors can reserve tickets between the 12th of November and January, starting on the 13th of next month. Housing 33 exhibition halls, M+ was opened to the public last November. But because of the fifth wave of the COVID pandemic, the museum closed its doors for several months until late April this year. As of yesterday, more than 1.5 million people have visited the museum. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.